IVM.
Hi, I'm Satyajit.
Hi, I'm Racheta.
Welcome to Paperback by the Open Library Project.
We have as our guest today Utsav Mamoria. Utsav is the host of Postcards from Nowhere podcast, available on IVM Podcasts. In the first half, we discussed The Art of Travel by Alain de Bottom.
In the second half, we discuss The Hour Between the Dog and the Wolf by John Coates, Curry, Tales of Cooks and Conquerors by Lizzie Collingham, and Being Mortal by Atul Gawande. Happy listening.
Journeys are the midwives of thought. Few places are more conducive to internal conversations than a moving plane, ship, or a train. There is an almost quaint correlation between what is in front of our eyes and the thoughts we are able to have in our heads. Large thoughts at times requiring large views, new thoughts, new places. Introspective reflections which are liable to stall are helped along by the flow of the landscape. The mind may be reluctant to think properly when thinking is all it is supposed to do. The task can be paralyzing, as having to tell a joke or mimic an accent on demand. Thinking improves when parts of the mind are given to other tasks, are charged with listening to music or following a line of trees. The music or the view distracts for a time that nervous, sensorious, practical part of the mind which is inclined to shut down when it notices something difficult emerging in the consciousness, and which runs scared of memories, longings, introspective or original ideas, and prefers instead the administrative and the impersonal.
Thank you, Utsav Mamoria. That was an extract from the book The Art of Travel by Alain de Bottom. We'll be right back after this to discuss the book in further detail.
Advertising is dead. Yep, you heard me right. Advertising is dead. We're all in the content business now. Let's not call it news, TV, radio, etc., etc. It's all content, and we're in the middle of this weirdly exciting phase where all the borders and lines that have been drawn over decades has been swept away by this lovely thing called the internet. We're a show where we don't dwell on just the stuff that is now, but rather the wider stuff about advertising, media, content, and the whole goddamn circus surrounding it. Tune in every Tuesday for our weekly unboxing of the mystery box we used to call advertising. I'm Varun Dugirala, co-founder and content chief at The Glitch, and this is my new podcast, Advertising is Dead.
Welcome to Paperback by the Open Library Project. I am your co-host Satyajit, otherwise known as Onion Knight in most food circles. I'm hosting this podcast with my co-founder at the Open Library Project, Racheta Sharma.
Hi guys, my name is Racheta. I'm an ex-banker, social impact entrepreneur, podcaster, writer, publisher, and inveterate learner. The Open Library Project is a curated library service which is offered to corporates on a subscription basis. The idea here is to create value, build a knowledge community, and encourage a growth mindset amongst our members.
Today we have with us on the show Utsav Mamoria. Utsav is the host of the Postcards from Nowhere podcast. Hey Utsav, it's great to have you on the show.
Thank you guys for having me here.
Yeah, and it's great to discuss your podcast here today because Satyajit and I both are really fond of traveling.
Oh, lovely.
So this is a special podcast
for us personally.
Yeah.
Oh, great. And travel should always be personal, right?
Yes,
so
yeah.
That's the whole point of sort of doing the podcast for me.
Great. So tell us a little bit about how you kind of got into podcasting and where your passion for travel kind of comes from.
Right. So I think my passion for podcasting was never really a passion. I completely stumbled into it.
Okay.
Thanks to the podcast Simplified, where I had a friend who sort of called me one day and said, "Ki, acha, listen, you do this market research thing for your work and all, and I want someone to come and talk about it." And I'm like, "Bhai, mere ko nahi aata hai kuch, please." Like, I can't go and talk and all. So they were like, "See, you just come.
Right.
And we'll have fun. If it doesn't work out, we'll scrap it."
Right.
I'm like, "Sure. I mean, if you don't have a problem, why not? I'll come."
Right.
So I came. I had a great time, and that went on to do well. So then about a year later, I went back to them and saying that, hey, so sort of what I'm doing is I'm taking a sabbatical from my job.
Okay.
And I'm traveling for 3 months.
Okay.
And I intend to write a book during that time. So would you be...
Fantastic.
Yeah. So would you be interested in sort of helping people understand how to go about taking a sabbatical, how to talk to your organization, how to plan for it, the finances, the time, and everything. So like, yeah, why sure not? We are simplifying everything. So let's simplify a sabbatical.
Taking a sabbatical.
Correct,
Yeah.
right?
Fantastic,
So, I did that. So I then went on. And then the next time when I came back and I said that, I have such a good understanding of how to travel on a budget, right? Because when I started traveling I was quite young and I didn't have money and stuff. So I was like, yaar, saste mein travel karenge, to budget travel. So I did a 2-part series with them on budget travel for desis, especially desi salary, because a lot of stuff out there is like people who are earning in dollars.
Yeah.
So they are like, $100 a day. I'm like, $100 a day?
It's too much for us.
Itne paise nahi hote hamesha ki you can do that.
Right.
So I did a 2-part series with them. And then that one of those episodes, they actually, the team itself, the producers as well as the host said, why don't you give a shot to your own podcast?
Right.
And I am like, okay, and this whole thing of self-rejecting कि नहीं अब होगा नहीं मैं कैसे करूँगा तो बहुत होता है वो. And but I was like, yeah, if everyone's saying, why don't give it a shot?
Yeah.
So then I first sort of the IVM form, I filled the whole thing and
Conceptualized the
podcast and took it to Amit and Kavita, and they sort of gave me feedback. I went back to the drawing board, completely conceptualized it from scratch, moved from interviewing format to narrative format and a whole bunch of other things. And then I think we ran pilots for 2 weeks and sort of to get my groove and because narrative is a lot different than doing a conversation.
Absolutely.
Right?
Definitely.
So I did that and then it was on and it's been 15th October, so it's been about a month odd.
Awesome.
From now. So,
and how's the response been so far?
Oh, it's been pretty good. I mean, the biggest worry I think as a content creator always is that will anyone listen to this or not?
That's
right?
the fear you have.
You have, right? Because
effort dal raha
hu. And you sometimes start linking it to your personal sort of personal confidence and a personal sort of space ki yaar pata nahi yaar, what if this fails and stuff.
Yeah, you become your biggest critic.
Correct.
You're like, I put on the headphones and I don't like my voice. And
because I remember the first time I was writing, I was like editing it 3 times, 5 times. I'm like, itna editing kyun kar raha hu main?
Right.
Yeah.
Like, let's go with it. Let's see what the response is, right? And people, and I've had some very good listeners who actually given me very good constructive feedback.
Awesome.
Saying that, and since it's been sort of a very good journey and we were just talking about banking episodes. I've also banked a lot of episodes. So that really helps. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, in the casual conversations you come up with really meaningful insights.
Absolutely.
So
that's why we love, that's why our podcast, has led to us personally learning a lot.
I think, and I'm sorry if this is a complete digression, but the podcasting journey itself is such a learning experience for the hosts themselves.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. Because first of all, if you're in the interview format, you meet people from such diverse backgrounds and points of views.
True.
It enriches your own perspectives about things, right?
Absolutely.
Even sometimes you have to research, you have to end up reading a lot, meeting people and doing that whole thing. That also changes you in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like an extension of travel because that's exactly when I'm traveling. I meet so many people. I've done so much solo traveling that I meet people, I talk to them and I hear how different their life is from mine. And
that gives you the different perspective on your own life.
Correct.
Right?
And I'm like, मैं ये सब मैं stress क्यों ले रहा हूँ?
Exactly.
I think it somewhere also tells you how privileged you are in terms of the number of things probably I took as granted as a kid.
And you feel like I've made such strong opinions about certain things, but I actually don't know much about it. So why was I so sure and I with so much conviction, supporting this point of view? And,
True. There's a lot of perspectives changing while traveling, right?
Absolutely.
So before we go ahead, Utsav, what happened to the book that you were writing?
Oh, so the thing is that I actually ended up writing it.
Okay.
But what's happening is I'm still editing it.
Okay.
I'm still not
is
very...
Is it the 3rd or 5th time?
No, I become slightly better. This is only the second edit I'm going through. But the book is tentatively titled Monastery in a Minefield.
Okay.
It's at the intersection of emotions and travel.
Okay.
And
that's
the
very
idea
interesting.
The idea is that a lot of emotions desert us in a very everyday urban living scenario, right? And travel allows you to sort of dissociate yourself from your daily life, put yourself in a different scenario, and be open to experiencing a lot of the other things.
Right.
That's very beautifully said.
And it goes both ways. Like one thing which I also don't like about a lot of travel writing in general is that people glorify how amazing traveling is. It is, but there are downsides, right? And there are a lot of emotions you will experience which are not the best emotions to experience. Like suppose, I've had chance to unfortunately experience life-threatening fear. Right, I was stuck in the drug district of Bogota in Colombia.
Oh my God!
Right, and there were gunshots outside. So I felt then.
Yeah, that's
this is it.
That's very scary.
Right. So it's an extreme example, but there are whole kinds of emotions you go through: intrinsic fear, extrinsic fear, fear of things which are outside your control, fear of things which are very inbuilt. Your own insecurities, and a lot of other things. So it's that interaction, and it helps me because that's what I do for a living. I understand human behavior for a living, and I sort of use that knowledge to help companies and American brands build better products and services.
Fantastic.
So that's why you could see one of the books I'm going to talk about has to do a lot with
Travel.
Psychology, to do with behavioral sciences, neurosciences, and so on.
Right.
So yeah, that's where I
so
come from.
The book that we're going to be talking about right now is The Art of Travel.
Yes,
the book, which is very relevant to what we were just talking about.
Correct.
And personally, one of my favorite books.
Oh, okay. I'm very happy to hear that.
Because it kind of... I also am of the person.
Mirrors you.
It mirrors me in the way that, I get uneasy if I'm not doing anything purposeful while traveling. And that is one of the lessons from the book, is that if you have a purpose to your travel that's outside travel itself,
right.
you will be much more fulfilled. And I've kind of found that in my journey while traveling, while going and exploring. I'm also of the belief that, you should spend time in a city rather than 3-4 days.
Right.
Go stay in the city for 3 months, if you can do that, figure it out, because that kind of changes. 3-4 days is not enough to experience everything. Let's be honest. It's a good touristy thing to do, but to really experience, I want to be a traveler, not a tourist, right?
That's one thing which is a little tricky. Okay.
Right.
So I spent about 6 months in China.
Okay.
I was working and living there, and the way I was living in Shanghai, and the way I saw Shanghai in the first 2 weeks versus the way I saw Shanghai at the end of 6 months was completely different.
Okay.
Right? Because the first 2 weeks, I was literally living like a tourist.
Right.
ठीक है, तो मैं वही कर रहा था, अच्छा यहाँ जाना है, वहाँ जाना है, यहाँ जाना है. But then I when I started to settle in, I'm like, okay, I have to buy groceries, I have to buy vegetables, I have to go, reality, right? I have to go to this particular place to get some documentation work done as a foreigner. Right. So then I'm started thinking about this cities, its history, its public transportation system, and a whole bunch of other things which you will not think about as a tourist, right?
Yeah.
And it gives you such a fresh perspective on things. Like one of the episodes I'm recording, which I've actually recorded for one of my own podcasts, is about Chinese tourists, right? And how much they are sort of abused by people, how they're loud, they're obnoxious, they're in large groups.
Right.
But there's an entire history as to why they have turned out that way.
Okay.
Right? And I think I could only appreciate it once I lived in that place for long enough. When I was actually, when on my own travels within China, I was able to sort of see them travel the way they travel and interact with some of them who spoke a little English and sort of got a sense of where they're coming from.
Right.
And how their history has shaped them. Right. So I think it also makes you a lot more empathetic as a human being. Right. It's so easy to sit and judge anyone. You know that ye to aise hain, wo to aise hain. And I think urban living makes you do that even more. But yeah, I think that you're absolutely right. Spending a lot more time in a place is of course helps you with a very different perspective on things.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about Art of Travel. What stood out for
so
for
I'll
you?
tell you how I stumbled upon the book. I actually stumbled upon the book through his YouTube channel.
Okay.
So he has a YouTube channel called The School of Life.
Okay.
And very interesting content, by the way. I would recommend your listeners to check it out also. And he talks about a whole bunch of things. So Alain de Bottom has written other books also. Is a book called Status Anxiety.
Okay.
Right, that how status anxiety fuels us from deep within and how it affects our behavior. Right. Then he has a book on love.
Okay.
Right. And his take on modern love and so on. And what it really sort of gave me a perspective on was that there is no one singular way to travel. I think that what really came out for me was that you have to define travel the way you think is right for you.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And one of the episodes also of my podcast, of course, a lot of my podcast ideas are coming from the book. I'll be very honest about it. The reason I have my book is go to get dog ear because I have underlined passages, made notes in the columns and so on.
The right way to read a book, basically.
Oh yeah, by the way, a lot of people get horrified. Do you underline your book? I'm like, I love the book. I want to go back and read those lines again and again. I think it's perfectly fine to underline your book.
Of course it is, of course.
The dog ears make me crazy though.
At one point, as a kid, I used to be so paranoid about dog ears. I used to put plastic covers on my books so that you dog eared nahi ho jaye.
Yeah, but
it's not health. Some of them are still dog eared now, but
just use a bookmark. Why are you like?
That's fair. Fair. But underlining is something that all guests who've been on our episodes, all readers,
when you
voracious
want to,
readers.
In a physical book, when you want to highlight something for yourself for references.
Correct.
I think it may be a sign of intelligence, underlining.
So yeah, and that's how I stumbled upon the book. And what really stood out for me was that the idea that you need to sort of curate your own experience, right? Now, people tell you, yaar, Instagram pe dekho, wahan wo jao, yahan dekh lo, wo dekh lo. But for example, now I would any day as a person pick mountains over beaches. Now it's a personal choice, right?
Right.
Now I am sure, nature, right? So I'm sure that beaches are fantastic places to go.
Yeah.
But it's just not my thing to do.
Right.
Right. But you're like, oh my God, you went to this country, you didn't go to the beach. I'm like, yeah, I didn't go because I didn't think it was time well spent for me.
Definitely. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The other thing he also sort of gave me was that a lot of our behavior when we are traveling is impacted by who is around us.
Okay.
Right? So even if you are traveling with your family or with your partner, you are never 100% your authentic self.
Okay.
You're always adjusting your behavior to the other person.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right? And while there's nothing wrong with it, but what it really gives you is a slightly shifted perspective of who you are yourself.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Versus when you are traveling solo,
Yeah.
you're not really worried about anyone judging you.
Yeah.
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 Right? Like you can be as ridiculous as you want. And you know that whoever is going to see you right now is never going to see you again.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So what also happens is that
You're
it feels free. And second, you will say things to strangers you will not say to your friends.
Yeah, and they also have never met you before. They don't know nothing about you. So
Correct.
it's
So they also
just-
don't carry the baggage
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
have.
that your friends also carry.
Yeah.
Carry
when they-
about you.
Yeah,
Yeah, ये
definitely.
तो ऐसे ही है. इसका तो रोज का कहानी है. यही बहुत क्रिप करते हैं लाइफ में.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So who would you recommend this book to? Is it only for travelers or does it have?
No,
like
I
a-
think it could be recommended to everyone because for me, traveling is a way to experience life, is to change your perspectives.
Yeah.
It's not about whether you want to travel. You might just take one trip in a year. You might just take one or maybe one trip in 2 years.
Yeah.
But the idea is that the mindset with which you travel, the lens with which you look at things is what makes things interesting.
Yeah.
Right.
Right?
And you won't get the, travel downer when you come back.
No.
Because you come back to the city and then in 2 days you're like, yeah, so basically this is my reality.
Correct.
While the mountains were beautiful.
Yeah.
So I guess when you're doing something meaningful there, then
Yeah.
it stays with you.
Correct. Now, for example, you might even start looking at your own city very differently. I'll give you an example of this. I was in Hong Kong to meet a friend, okay? And Hong Kong, of course, is very space constrained like Bombay.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Very,
Oh,
very
yeah.
small places, right? And I remember I was staying at his house and the room was so small that my head and my feet were both touching the wall when I was sleeping in the
Right.
room. Right. And I understood that, how important space becomes in an urban setting, right?
Yeah.
And I'm a migrant to Bombay, so I'm not from Bombay.
Okay.
But my appreciation for Bombay went to another level when I came back.
Right.
Because I'm like, okay, at least Hong Kong is prosperous in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Bombay is prosperous, but Bombay has a lot of inequality as well.
Definitely.
Right? But to think that people have been able to achieve so much with so little, living in cramped spaces, fighting for every single resource out there,
Yeah.
Yeah.
it just makes you think that there are people out there who can do so much with so little.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? And it completely changed my perspective. So while I had a good time in Hong Kong and I missed it when I came back, but it changed the way I looked at Bombay. And to me, it was great because, I was like... it was
Looked at your
initially-
city in a fresh light.
Yeah, in a fresh
with
light,
new
right?
love.
It's like I'm going to the new city, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
suddenly I'm thinking, yeah, this place has economic space so well.
Yeah.
Right? Like, first I probably used to crib about the fact that ki Dadar mein itni bheed kyun hai? I'm like, Dadar is a massively efficient system.
Yeah. Everyone makes it through every day, right?
Everyone makes
Yeah.
it through every day and gets around wherever they want to get.
Exactly.
And how many people can actually do this?
Yeah.
So yeah, it was fantastic that way. It gave me a very interesting perspective on how my own city is right now.
Fantastic, yeah. I think this is something I've experienced as well while traveling abroad. You come back and you're like, oh wow, my city is amazing. Yeah.
Correct.
Because a lot of things we don't realize because we take it for granted in our daily lives, right?
Yeah.
The other thing also what I love is that one of the beautiful parts of this book, and I'm just trying to see if I can quickly pull it through as we speak,
Yeah.
is the fact that photographing, right?
Okay.
Photography has exploded. There is Instagram and we're taking photographs everywhere. But has anyone thought of it that why do we actually take photographs? Right? And this book gave me a wonderful perspective is that when you go and experience a thing of beauty, your desire it is to capture it and tell people that I was here, it
Right.
was beautiful and this mattered to me.
Yeah.
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 Right? And that is so critical to what we are trying to do today as a culture as well, right?
Yeah.
हमको लगता है यार कि मेरी life बहुत unique है, मेरी life बहुत important है, इसलिए I want to capture every single moment and tell the world this is what is happening to me.
Right.
Yeah.
Even to the other person, it could be completely like, हाँ क्या ये 250 फोटो क्यों अपलोड किया अपनी ट्रैवल के, मेरे को इंटरेस्ट नहीं है देखने में. But to you, it's very personal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Right? So, and they said that, the idea of possessing beauty is timeless for us.
Yeah.
It's just that photography is the way to do it today. Previously, we used to paint.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Previously, you create art out of it.
Yeah.
Today, it has taken a form of photography, which of course the mobile phone camera has made it super easy for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? So that's one of the other insights of this book I found to be very, very brilliant. The another one which I really like is the fact that your happiness or your satisfaction is never going to come from materialistic things.
Yeah.
So the author is out with his partner at a beautiful resort in the Caribbean, right? And every conceivable luxury that is out there is available to him. But he has a small tiff with his partner, and he says how the entire beauty and the luxury of the place just goes away.
Disappeared.
Yeah.
Completely disappeared.
Yeah.
And he says that, your happiness or satisfaction is always going to come from things which are inside of you.
Yeah.
And rather than outside of you. And as Indians, it resonates with us because we've always been in this whole philosophical, spiritual thing of saying that you have to find your happiness and
Inside,
space within rather than outside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's also true for travel because it doesn't matter where you travel. It's about how you travel. I mean, you can go to the Taj Mahal and say it's a horrible thing or say it's probably one of the most wonderful things I've seen. It just depends on your perspective of it.
Right.
Fantastic. On that thought, we're going to take a short break and we'll be right back after this.
Hey everybody, welcome to another amazing week on the IVM Podcast Network. You know what? Not just an amazing week. This is going to be an amazing year. We're looking forward to all the stuff that we're going to bring you in 2020. Please remember to fill out our survey, ivmpodcast.com/survey. That's going to really help us know what you guys want from us from 2020 as well, right? I mean, we'd really like to hear from you. So please do fill out that survey. It would be very helpful. Also, would like to thank our sponsors on the network this week. We have Intel, Cambly, and Storytel. Also, if you're not following us on social media, please do. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. It's a week of milestones. We have a couple of milestones this week. Geek Fruit released the 300th episode this week. What a journey it's been. Join Tejas and Dinkar as they celebrate this milestone by talking about HBO's new hit show, Watchmen. Actually, surprisingly, at this point, Geek Fruit is the second oldest show on our network, so it's definitely a show if you haven't checked out, please do check out. Another milestone that we have is it's the 50th episode of our Kannada show, Thale Harate. So definitely do check that stuff out. And as for the rest of our regular programming, on Cyrus Says this week, Cyrus talks to actor Neil Bhopalam. On IVM Likes, Abbas Alika, Ritika and Madhuri give their weekly recommendations, discuss their favorite short stories, and talk about our new storytelling show, Tapri Tales. On Golgappa, Trupti is joined by Nikhil Mahajan, a director who carved a niche in the industry through his film Pune 52. He elaborates on the craft of storytelling and what goes into making films for a living. On KBCD, Farhad and Sunetro talk about their experiences of having lived in different cities. They share how different cities have had an impact on their queer identity. On Litnama, Lakshmi talks to Sonia Thomas about her work at BuzzFeed, the meme culture, internet as a space for women, TikTok videos, and digital literary trends. On Tapri Tales, Mallory tells the story of a mother who tries to understand YouTube trends and garners a dream of having her own YouTube channel. And with that, let's get on with your show.
Welcome back, guys. We still have with us Utsav Mamoria, host of the Postcards from Nowhere podcast. Hey, Utsav, that was a fascinating first half. I think we traveled a little bit with you to Hong Kong.
Thank you. That's the aim of the podcast as well. That whoever listens to me is able to travel with me, even if they are sitting in the worst commute of their life.
That's a great way to look at a commute, actually. If you're listening to someone who's talking about travel, you won't actually feel the commute. Fantastic. Yeah, great stuff. So the next book that we're talking about is Curry.
Yeah.
And the author of Curry is...
Lizzie Collingham.
Lizzie Collingham. So tell us a little bit about this book, Utsav.
Okay, so this book actually is a gift from a friend.
Okay.
The best gifts.
Oh, yeah. And the best one, this is a surprise gift that, one boring day in office, this Amazon guy comes and says, you have a courier? I'm like, then you go and like, मैंने order किया नहीं है. I'm like, chalo. And then you open, there is a book. I'm like, yaar, ye log sahi hai. ऐसे friends होने चाहिए life में, who without telling you off gave you books, right?
Agree.
Yeah, I actually have the ideal audience for agreeing to this, both of you.
100%.
Yeah, and he gave me this book. He knows I'm absolutely in love with food. I think my love for food is so much that the only reason I started to cook is because I'm in life. I'm like, मेरे को dependent नहीं होना अच्छा खाना खाने के लिए किसी पे. मैं खुद ही बना लूँगा.
Wow.
Yeah. Fantastic.
So that's how it started, and I love understanding people and cultures, right? And that's one big reason why I travel. And the advantage of Curry is that sort of it takes each chapter is sort of broken into different food items, right? So, for example, the entire chapter on tea, there's an entire chapter on biryani, there's on korma, on vindaloo, right? And talks about how they actually evolved and came into being today to what has become sort of very integral part of Indian food,
Right.
right? And it's sort of, in fact, this whole book has given me an entire 10 series episode idea for my own podcast.
Okay, wow.
Saying that, how, we are becoming more and more xenophobic, we're becoming more intolerant as a nation or as a world. But the fact that whatever we call ourselves today is not ourselves. It's nothing is pure per se. Everything is meta. Everything is an influence of a whole hundreds of things, right?
Yes,
like as you talk about books, right? You say that there is nothing really original in writing, also because it's inspired by something. Someone's experience, someone's thoughts, or something, right?
You read 50 books and then you write one. So basically, it's a culmination of all
and
of
let's face it, there has never been a great writer who has not read enough. You cannot be one.
100% agree to that statement. Yeah.
Right? So it gave me such an interesting perspective of something as simple as tea, right? And how 150 years ago no one drank tea in India. Today we cannot imagine our life without tea. Right? And some very...
It's like one of the staples now.
Correct, it was brought in by the Britishers, I believe.
Correct, right. And it's considered the world's greatest marketing campaign because British wanted to find a new market for tea. Right, and
so they sold it to
us. And the best part about it is, and I'm going to let out a little bit for my episode, is that I want to call it colonizing the colonizers because they wanted, we wanted to be drinking prim and proper British style tea.
Right.
And we're like, दूध डालेंगे, उसमें फिर चीनी डालेंगे, फिर उसमें हम अदरक भी डालेंगे और उसमें इलायची भी डालेंगे, and they were like, what the hell are these guys doing? I'm like, हम तो ऐसे ही पी रहे हैं, तुम्हें लगता है तो रखो नहीं तो हम नहीं पी रहे हैं. That's literally what has happened, right? And initially the British were absolutely horrified, appalled, ये क्या है? And then of course they realized that you cannot change Indians. हम तो वही करेंगे जो हमें करना है. And just told me that what you consider so intrinsically Indian today, 150 years ago was not even Indian.
Right.
And 150 years ago is not a long time in history. Right? True. And it talks about things like how the Portuguese influenced food in India and how a lot of Goan traditions we come today are a mix of Portuguese and Indian. Right, and how a lot of these Portuguese colonialists actually also adapted Indian traditions.
Okay.
Right, so they also sort of amalgamated into the space and how that food has changed over time.
So exchange of culture.
Exchange of culture, right?
Especially with food. Like I always, when I think back about history and all, like when you don't know languages with each other.
True.
I think the first thing you learn to learn the words for is the food that you're going to trade with, right? A lot of even languages, in fact, have evolved so much because of this exchange of culture, and it's like you rightly said, none of us are original in what we believe we are original in. Which
absolutely. For example, even this thing chai, you look at the chai is called by the same variation of the word everywhere. Somewhere it's cha, chi, chai. It's the same thing, right?
Chai tea in Starbucks.
Chai tea. Oh yeah, let's not even go there. This is one thing I've not wrapped my head around. I'm like, ये क्या है? फिर they tell us, फिर they will come and tell us, you must drink turmeric latte. मैंने कहा हल्दी का दूध हम बहुत सालों से पी रहे हैं. So don't even try to tell me I should drink turmeric latte.
So who would you recommend this book to?
So this one I would recommend to anyone who is interested in food.
Okay.
Of course. But also someone who's interested in how did the world become what it is today?
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think we need to sort of appreciate that everything is such a glorious mix of things that you can't even imagine what has happened. So I think anyone who's interested in food, anyone who's interested in understanding what we are today, how we became that, is someone should be interested in this book.
I just love books that give you a new take on history.
Our
perspective on history, which is the textbooks that we learned from.
Yeah, so of course, fairly dry perspectives on history though.
So the next book that we are going to be talking about is Being Mortal.
This one
is going to be.
So the book is called The Hour Between Dog and Wolf.
Okay,
and it's
an interesting title.
Yeah, and I'll tell you where this comes from actually. So in ancient Europe, there used to be this time in the evening where the sun used to be setting down, and the light used to become so dim that if you were standing far away, you could not say that the animal standing there is a dog, which is a friend, or a wolf is an enemy.
Okay.
And this book basically talks about risk-taking, gut feelings, and the biology of boom and bust. Now, the author, John Coates, is a very interesting guy. So he was actually a trader at Wall Street, right? So he did a very high-stress job in terms of trading securities and commodities. And he quit that to go and pursue a PhD in neurosciences.
Okay.
Right? And his entire take of understanding the thing of how do we take risks, how does our gut react to things, and what is the whole biology of it.
Okay.
Like one of the things, people always say that, listen to your gut. Right?
Yeah.
But there is a catch to it, right? Now, if you think of it, when you think of, let's say, a sports person, right? Now, a sports person goes through hours and hours of training, of, actually playing matches and sports and stuff. So when a sports person is presented with a scenario where you take a very, very quick decision, he or she has been in that entire process thousands of times.
Yeah.
Right? However, for most of us, that's not the case.
Right.
So you should trust your gut if you have been in this space and if you've been doing something for a very long period of time.
Okay.
Because gut is an acquired sense.
Right.
All right, so it says evolutionary also. when we talk about a fight and flight response.
Right.
He says that a fight and flight works simply because it's a very A or B kind of a response. They're completely polar opposites.
Yeah.
But a lot of our decisions are not that kind of decisions.
Yeah.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
They're not.
Yeah.
They're very sort of in between gray decisions.
areas,
Right?
Yeah.
And most of the times we find ourselves lacking in terms of experience to make that decision.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right? And so the idea is to probably delay your intuition and gut about things, right?
Okay.
Like,
Yeah.
just don't react immediately to it.
Okay.
Right? Sort of slow
Don't
it
react,
down.
like wait a few
Yeah,
minutes.
wait, it could be
then-
just a few seconds, it could be just a few minutes, right? But your immediate gut may not always be right.
Yeah.
Right.
Right?
I think your immediate reaction to something is also sometimes jaded by your past experiences.
Yeah.
So if you were in a not so pleasant situation the last time, then your gut usually tells you to stay away from what it is, even if it may be the right
Right.
decision.
Like, I'll give you a very good example. So any women listeners would identify with this, is that women have a fantastic gut of looking at a guy and telling her, are they feeling safe around him or not?
Yeah.
Right? Now that's because the way our society is structured, they have been conditioned to so many of those scenarios every single day
Yeah.
that they feel that there is unwanted attention around them. So their radar to catch someone is very, very sharpened.
Yeah.
Right.
That's good gut. Right? Because it's been sharpened over time.
Through
Yeah.
experience.
It's unfortunate,
Right.
but it's true. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's sharpened over time.
Yeah, that's a very valid point.
Right?
Yeah.
Whereas most men will have never experienced this.
Yeah.
Right? Which is why most men, when faced with violent situations, react very, very poorly because they have zero experience of understanding how this is going to play out.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? They react to like, reaction is I'll either you to fight or flight, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes that fight can be really, really miserable outcomes for you.
Yeah,
Right.
that's true.
So
and women
that's
are
the-
almost like 40% ready at all times.
Yeah. No, because they have been through so much
Yeah.
shit in their entire lives growing up that they are sort of
That's
very ready, and the gut is very trained in that sense.
That's a fantastic point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it gives me a whole new perspective on this thing. So tell us, how did this book come to you? Was this also a gift, or did you pick this up?
So this was actually, I'm very interested in behavioral sciences and neurosciences and
Right.
how the brain makes decisions and stuff. So this is one of those things, you are looking on Amazon and the algorithm very helpfully recommends books to you.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, first of all,
Sounds
the
good.
title to interesting hai.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then I read about the guy. So one thing with non-fiction is I'm very clear is that I definitely want to read about the author
Yeah.
and see where they come from, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people's wild ideas also are pushed under the garb of non-fiction.
Yeah, definitely.
I want to sort of stay clear of that, especially if it's especially if it's like something which is fairly scientific and
Yeah.
sort of can be validated through a lot of other readings.
Yeah.
So I read about this guy, read out a few other reviews of places I sort of go to and see, like, okay, it sounds good. And this book is heavy reading. I would definitely recommend it to someone only who's very interested in this and is willing to sort of invest time in it. It's not a beginner's book.
Right.
Right? But if this kind of thing interests you, should definitely pick it up.
I think a very interesting mix between a neuroscientist and a trader. There will be very few
Yeah.
people in the world who kind of
And the best part is that
intermix those two disciplines.
he has the balance of having undertaken risk every single day in his job.
Right.
Yeah.
Because you're putting millions of dollars on a bet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Versus actually understanding the biology and the neuroscience of it and the back end.
Right.
So it's a balance between theory and the practice of it.
Fantastic. A great book. And a great book recommendation for anyone who wants to kind of explore that risk taking, because risk has become such a word of fashion nowadays, like up the
Bilkul.
risk and all. But understand why you're taking the risk,
True.
or what makes you take the risk,
Take the risk,
It
great
has to
book.
be like a informed decision.
Yeah. Great. And the last book we're going to be speaking about today is Being Mortal by Atul Gawande.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm a massive fan of Atul Gawande. This is full fanboying moment is happening. I know he'll never listen to this, but why not?
We'll tag him.
We'll tag
We
him.
are going to tag him 100%.
Okay, so Atul Gawande, I respect him for multiple reasons. One is that he's genuinely prolific, right? Like, he does so much. He's a full-time surgeon. Until recently, he was a full-time surgeon, and he has a company which controls non-profits, and he has written 4 bestsellers. He has been writing a column in the New Yorker for the last 20 years.
Right.
And यहाँ तो मैं अपना ऑफिस ही मैनेज कर लूँ तो मुझे लगता है मैंने बहुत उखाड़ लिया लाइफ में तो लगता है कि नहीं बस आज तो बहुत कर लिया. So that's the thing. And the other thing I also like is that he really simplifies medicine for someone who probably has no background to it.
Okay.
Right? And he's able to sort of bring a very human perspective to medicine. And some of his writing is so good that I remember this happened is one of his articles on the New Yorker. So Warren Buffett liked it so much that he sent him a $20,000 check for that article. He's like, this is so good.
Wow.
And this is like nothing, no one sort of unravels the healthcare system of America better than this one single article.
Wow.
Okay. And I am like... Yeah,
that's a vote of confidence.
Yeah, that's another vote of confidence. Very nicely.
Definitely going back and reading this.
In fact, I'll send you guys the link.
Yeah,
okay. Yeah. And he promptly went ahead and donated it to one of his favorite charities. Of course, he didn't keep the money. And what I really like about Being Mortal is his perspective on the entire medical science job is currently to elongate life. Right? So people get sick, they get into the ICU, put on the ventilator, and so on and so forth. But his point is the medical science's job should actually be to improve the quality of life of the last years of your life.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right? And he gives a very simple example. And any listeners, I'll go in the recommendation straight away. Any of you who have parents who are older, anyone whose parents are probably in the 60s or maybe even 50s, is you should read this book. I think aging is one of the things which we rarely ever discuss.
Yeah.
Right? And he talks about it so beautifully when he says that the most important thing for an old person is not money, it's not attention, it is purpose.
Okay.
As we get older, as people retire, they don't find purpose. They are like, why am I alive? Main kya kar raha hu? If you have a job, there's a purpose. You have to have somewhere to go to. Right?
There's too much free time also.
There's so much free time, right? And then that's why also one of the reasons I think...
Sort of like, calculating all that you've done through your life, and then you want to make that impact before, or make some difference before, you're like leaving the world.
Yeah, the larger narrative of your life should have a very grand ending, I think is what you're trying to say.
Yeah.
And like that's why I think grandparents dote on grandkids so much, because it gives them a massive sense of purpose, right?
Yeah.
It gives them a reason to get up every day. It gives them a reason to really, go out about their day. I need to do this. Like I can't getting up at 11 o'clock in the morning, because if I don't get up, I won't get time to play with my child or help them with their chores or whatever.
Yeah.
Right? And they give a very beautiful example in a hospital where it was an elderly care system. And one of the things they introduced was that they got pets.
Okay.
And they allotted one resident, one pet, and this your job is to take care of them. Okay. Your job could literally be feeding them 4 times a day. If it's a parrot, wo rakhna hai, pani rakhna hai. If it's a dog, taking for a walk.
Yeah.
But that alone improved health outcomes for them. They had lesser falls. They were more attentive. They remembered to take their medication. Right? They got off with a sense of purpose.
Yeah.
They've reported far better mental health as well.
Yeah.
They did not feel depressed. Because those pets alone give them a sense of purpose.
So I think that's such a valid point, because when you're not just taking care of yourself, when it's only yourself, you tend to be like, chalta hai attitude. It's me only, right? There's no one else responsible for it.
Yeah, and it's more like, nobody's there and nobody cares whether I'm dead or alive.
Yeah.
So let me just go on with this till I can. And when you have a pet around who's giving you that love and warmth back, then I guess that's what makes the difference.
I think the other thing also it talks about is respecting people's choices, right? We feel that, suppose if someone's parents are extremely ill and you have to take a decision for them as to, things could change for you very drastically.
Yeah.
It's very important to consult them, right? For you may think that elongating their life is the best thing, but maybe that's not what they want. And it's a very difficult thing to actually think about. First of all, I mean, I really hope no one has to be at that point, but we know that realistically a lot of us will reach at that point in some stage that we'll have to take some of the decisions for our parents. It's very important to consult them that do they want a longer life, or do they want to live the best time? It could be just a few months, but they want to live it well.
Yeah.
Right? The quality versus quantity debate is one thing which this book really got me into perspective. I never thought of aging in that sense. And it's very important because with people who are very young or very old, you need a lot of patience. Right? And we are getting more impatient as we go along. And sort of also tells you that how important, and the book ends on a very poignant note that the author loses his own father to cancer.
Okay.
Right. And he says that, all this is, I have thought about this all my life, and now I'm in this exact position to make that decision. And I know how hard it is to make that decision.
What a tough conversation to have also.
Right.
I mean, just to get yourself to that mental mind frame to even have the conversation.
And his own father was a doctor.
Right.
Okay. And even said, even then, both of us being in this business, it was such a difficult conversation for me to have. And I remember that
because you always have that hope, right? You don't want, it's your selfishness also of like
Absolutely.
letting go of
we are all selfish that way. You would always want our loved ones to be around forever. But somewhere you have to accept that we are mortal, and that's what the book is about, being mortal. And accepting that death is a part which will come sooner or later.
Right.
But not from a depressing way, but from the point that a life well lived is better. As you know, one of my favorite films, which from the 70s is Anand, and he says, Zindagi badi honi chahiye babu mushay, lambi nahi. It's a very simple insight, but it's a very penetrating insight into how we should be probably thinking about our lives.
Fantastic, yeah. A great episode, and on that note, we're going to end the episode. So, Utsav, where can we find the Postcards from Nowhere podcast?
So, yeah, of course, it's
everywhere.
On everywhere.
All the
because
podcasting
IVM
networks.
makes sure that your podcast is everywhere. So, it's on IVM.
A shout out to IVM, for
seriously.
sure. Like a great support system. For
Absolutely.
all of us.
So, I'm available on YVTravel42 on Instagram. So, in case you guys want to sort of tell me nice things, tell me not so nice things about this episode, I'm there to hear you out. I'm Utsav Mamoria on Twitter as well. And of course, you can send feedback to your host as well, and they'll pass it on to me.
Fantastic.
Yes, absolutely.
And a big thank you to all our listeners. You can follow the Open Library Project on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook for latest updates on our events. And stay tuned for the next Paperback podcast on IVM Podcasts. Happy reading. You can follow IVM Podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at IVM Podcasts. Listen to Paperback on the IVM Podcast app, website, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Remember the last vacation you took? What about the one you took 3 years ago? Okay, how much do you really remember? It's a question I've asked myself often. Over a decade of traveling the world. Hey, I'm Utsav, and I do not travel the world for a living. I have a full-time job and responsibilities, but I have made traveling the world a priority. Priority enough that I negotiate extra leave in my job contracts, obsessively track my frequent flyer miles, and I'm willing to take off at the sight of a cheap ticket. Yes, I am cheap. I have lived and worked in 3 countries. I understand human behavior for a living. And these experiences have given me unique insights into places, people, and culture. With over a decade of travel behind me, I increasingly realized one thing, that we cannot see everything. So whatever we see, we must see deeply. Because as the film of memory decays, the imprints which will stand the test of time are the ones felt by the immersion of the senses, not by fleeting encounters with them. Postcards from Nowhere is an immersion into the world of slow travel, one story at a time. Tune in every Thursday on the IVM Podcasts app, website, or wherever you get your podcast from.
Are you looking for India's most awesome cricket podcast? Are you now tired of listening to the same old guys drone on about cricket everywhere? Edges and Sledges is a weekly cricket podcast hosted by 3 fans of the game, Varun, DJ, and myself, Ashwin. It was established in early 2018, has over 60 episodes now, and is of course now proud to be on the IVM Podcast Network. Each week, we get together from 3 different time zones, the USA, the UK, and Singapore, and we talk about things from the world of cricket, with a focus on Indian cricket. We often interview special guests from all around the world, including former cricketers and cricket media personalities. So check out Edges and Sledges, the cricket podcast, now on the IVM network.